In winter of 2016, a young woman's body was found burning in the alley somewhere in this area behind these homes. One was found here, one was found a few blocks away. A few blocks that way and further south might be where you find another story.
Mikki Kendall was born and raised in Chicago. She's a well-known feminist author who has spent much of her adult life fighting for police accountability.
Were most of the bodies found in sort of spaces like this?
Yeah, Chicago lots are long. They're not that wide, but they're pretty long. If you're in the front of the house and it starts behind your garage, you might have no idea what's happening until you smell the smoke, by which point there's not any evidence left. And with no police patrols, you could literally get away with murder, and people are.
In November 2007, 2 women were found strangled in burning dumpsters near Washington Park on the South Side. They had been killed within 48 hours of one another. Those cases, and at least 4 others we found over a 10-year period, were never solved.
The default right now is just looking at all of the murders this century.
Tom Hargrove is also a Chicago native and the co-founder of the Murder Accountability Project, a database that tracks unsolved murders around the country. Tom and his partner, a retired FBI agent, built an algorithm that allows him to identify and track patterns in homicides.
What does your algorithm show you about pattern killings in Chicago?
The algorithm is signaling red alert that there have been far too many strangulation murders, mostly of African American women, whose crimes went unsolved. No arrest was made.
But tracking unsolved murders isn't an easy task. Cities and states are not required to report their clearance rates. That's the percentage of murders solved.
Is there a link between a low clearance rate and the prevalence of serial killers?
I can tell you that a killer is more likely to get away with a series of murders in a place that has a low clearance rate. If you do a poor job catching killers, you're going to do a poor job catching serial killers.
What is the incentive for a state to not report its murder statistics?
The data may not make you look good, as it turns out was the case in Illinois. Illinois has the worst clearance rate of any state in the nation.
Unsolved murders aren't anything new in Chicago. The city has solved less than 20% of its murders over the past 30 years. The number is a bit hazy because Chicago stopped reporting their clearance rates in 1995. By comparison, other major cities like Los Angeles and New York report clearance rates at about 70%.
There are other cities that have neighborhoods like this that are low income and mostly black, but the clearance rate in those neighborhoods are still pretty high, like 50 to 70%. Like, what is it about Chicago where they have like such a low clearance rate?
As a longtime resident, I am not seeing a lot of effort on actual crime solving. You know, you're not seeing cops out in these neighborhoods knocking on doors and actually talking to people. Most of the time when you see the police, they're harassing you, right? If you hear on the news that someone has been harmed, shot, killed, whatever, and then you hear the phrase, the victim was gang affiliated, the victim was standing near someone gang affiliated. As far as the cops are concerned, no humans were involved. But at a certain point, you have to start asking, who's putting bodies in garbage cans? This would be an important question.
If people don't trust police, if people don't talk to police, if witnesses consider police to be the enemy, why should you be surprised when most of those murders go unsolved? You keep your eyes wide shut, and you get what you get.
Over the course of 2 months, we tried repeatedly to contact the Chicago Police Department about the murders. They denied our request for an interview, but confirmed their low clearance rates. Today, before this piece was slated to air, they offered a series of bizarre, conflicting statements. But in the end, they said, quote, "Based upon what CPD detectives know as part of their concurrent investigations into the separate homicide incidents highlighted by Vice News, there is absolutely no information to suggest that this is the work of an active serial killer. To conclude otherwise without detailed case information known by detectives would be hyperbolic and careless."
When you hear about like 2 bodies, you think you're nuts. When it gets to 6 and you're hearing stories about other bodies, you start to think that probably not the most common method of settling a drug dispute, right? Like, this isn't someone got shot. This isn't someone was choked or punched. This is not a common way in which someone dies. They're literally stripped naked and stuffed in a garbage can and then set on fire. That seems really specific.
Why did the police not go into that community and say, hey, there are a bunch of women that were found strangled in burning dumpsters. Perhaps you should be more careful?
For a lot of reasons. They don't want to cause panic. They don't also want the increased scrutiny that announcing that we have a serial killer brings. But still, the Justice Department recommends that when a serial killer has been detected, that a public warning be issued. So, let me issue a warning. I believe that there are probably more than one serial killer active in Chicago.